My brother threw a party to spite me the night before my wedding. My parents chose it over mine, and I filed for a restraining order. My brother threw a birthday party the night before my wedding. Despite me, my parents preferred his party over my wedding and arrived at my house at 4 a.m. to harass me. I was married a few days ago, but my family did not attend my brother. Gerald was not even invited because we don't like one another. That was not surprising. But my parents did not turn up. Gerald decided at the last minute to have a wild 28th birthday party the night before my wedding. He sent out invites to all of our family approximately a week before my wedding, simply to be petty and nasty. Because he had not been invited, it was quite a big thing. He had booked up a large facility and gone all out with entertainment, hiring a live band and a stand-up comedian to play. I'm only assuming that the catering and drink arrangements were online with the performance, although the performers are not particularly well known. On a national scale, they are well known on the local circuit. Aside from that, I think everything would have been fairly pricey. My cousin showed me the invitation, and for a few minutes, I was concerned that people would attend his celebration, rather than our wedding. Even if they chose to do so, there was little we could do about it. My wife and I both understood that individuals would have to choose they couldn't attend the party the night before, and then attend our wedding the next day, because the party was in the city and we were getting married in a hotel about 8 hours away. We did not want to say anything to our guests. We wanted to allow everyone to make their own decisions, and we were extremely fortunate that everyone opted to attend the wedding. In retrospect, it is silly that we were concerned in the first place, because a wedding is far more important than a birthday. My parents were the only ones who did not attend, which was surprising even though we had a quarrel a few days before our wedding. I didn't anticipate them to attend his party and then skip the ceremony. The fight had occurred on a call 4 days before the wedding. After that, I became quite busy with last-minute preparations and was unable to call them. They didn't bother either, but I never imagined they'd skip it. Especially since the wedding is such an important occasion in someone's life. Especially when it's your own child, the fight was also about the wedding and birthday. After my cousin showed me the invitation, I called my parents to explain what was going on. I assumed they were going to be on my side, explaining things to my brother and convincing him to back down. Instead, they began telling me that it was my responsibility for not inviting him to the wedding and putting our previous disagreements aside. They stated he had every right to be petty, and I couldn't expect them to step in and try to defuse the issue because we weren't kids anymore, and they didn't believe it would be appropriate. I have to admit that I was unhappy with my parents. They were attempting to rationalize my brother's actions despite the fact that they were extremely cruel and petty. So I confronted them about it, and we got into a brief fight. I ultimately hung up telling them that if they truly believed he was doing the right thing by causing difficulty for us, they could just go to his party and skip the wedding. I did not speak with them again until the morning of the wedding day while we were driving to the hotel. I kept attempting to phone them because they were meant to accompany us, but the car we had sent for them had returned empty. The driver told us that he had repeatedly tried to ring the doorbell and call our parents, but no one responded. I tried to call them all day, but nobody responded at night. I was expected to concede that they might not make it the following day, even in the morning, right before the ceremony. I expected them to arrive and attempted to call them, but they did not. I had to marry without them. I would have been upset, but I was about to marry the love of my life. So these things didn't affect me at the time after the wedding. I decided not to bother contacting them again, because they had already missed the most important milestone of my life later that evening at the reception. They finally called me back. I responded out of curiosity, wanting to know what they had to say to me. When I picked up, they informed me that because I had instructed them not to attend the wedding, they had done so. Despite this, they still wanted to congratulate me. I assumed they were talking about the wedding, but they later explained that they were congratulating me not only on the wedding, but also on getting my way. Obviously, no one in the family had bothered to attend the celebration. My parents were unhappy with me, and they made it apparent over the phone that they thought I had said something to everyone else to turn them against my brother. Not only had they skipped the party, but they had also chastised and reprimanded him about his actions via messages and phone calls. Even though his friends and co-workers had attended the party, it had been a huge waste because he had expected a large number of people to show up, but just a few did. Gerald is now not only dissatisfied with the rest of the family, but he has also wasted a significant amount of money. This is meant to be my responsibility because my parents truly believed that I had said something to turn the rest of the family against him, despite the fact that any normal human being would have behaved similarly so. While I was on the phone with him, I excused myself from reception and went out to discuss the problem. I told them how sad I was that they had opted to forego my wedding over such trivial matters. Furthermore, they were ridiculing me right now for getting my way. Despite the fact that the rest of the family had already made their decision, I was upset with them. So I ripped into them. They told me they didn't care what I thought since they knew I was envious and insecure about my brother, which is why I'm acting this way. That was the final straw. So I hung up, blocked them, and vowed to spend the rest of the evening without thinking about these guys. I did not want them to ruin the happiest day of my life. It's been a few days since the wedding, so I finally decided to issue a statement on what transpired. Many people were vexed as to why my parents had chosen to forego the wedding, as they couldn't believe they had chosen Gerald's celebration. Instead, I decided to send an email to all of the guests outlining the entire situation in detail, including the party my brother had hosted, the disagreement my parents had with me, and what I had told them about not showing up to the wedding. Then I told them about the quarrel we had over the phone during reception. Basically, I laid everything out and didn't spare any details. Everyone is now cutting them off, and they are once again blaming me for it, claiming that I go out of my way to cause drama and be spiteful toward my family. That could be the case. So I talked about why my parents did not attend my wedding in detail, turning the rest of the family against them. Okay, since many of you have asked why my brother and I don't get along, there's no particular reason. Even as children, we were not particularly close. But as we grew older, we became increasingly distant. He always seemed to be a little jealous of me, constantly mimicking me and whatnot, which used to irritate me. So we began fighting, and by the time we started at high school, we truly disliked each other. Then I left for college and stayed for employment. I would go home on occasion, but he was really unpleasant even then. He would make disparaging remarks about my appearance, my salary, and other topics. It used to really irritate me. So I just started ignoring him because I knew I'd have to see him, and it didn't seem worth it to reply to him and provoke fights. After a while, he recognized that I was not going to give him the satisfaction of genuinely reacting to him. So we simply stopped talking to each other. Even at family events, we would ignore each other. So there wasn't a specific occurrence that prompted us to behave in this manner. It was simply a series of bad occurrences throughout the years that led to our disagreement. I did not invite him to the wedding. I do not believe I did anything wrong. I don't think he expected to be invited, and if he did, it would have been an unfair expectation. My parents also know and understand why I stopped speaking to him. They attempted to patch things up at first, but it failed, so they eventually gave up. But they had never been more supportive of him or me. As far as I could tell, they had always tried to be fair to both of us, so I was astonished by their latest attitude. It felt like they were being unnecessarily biased against him, which had never happened before anyway. That's what it is. I can't help myself now. Update number 1, first and foremost. Thank you to everyone who left comments. It felt good to be told that this is not my fault and that I had nothing to apologize for. All of the emails from my parents that had been flooding my inbox since I revealed the truth to the rest of the family have been deleted, and I've blocked them everywhere. They can continue to try to create new accounts and contact me, but I will not retract what I wrote about them. Besides, it's not like I made it up and began spewing irritating fake information about them. I just told the truth in the email I wrote to everyone in the family. I didn't even discuss my personal feelings. I simply stated the facts as it stood. People were free to make their own decisions about what they wanted to do, and if others want to cut them off because of their behavior, that's not my problem. On the day of the wedding, they had already accused me of attempting to turn the rest of the family against Gerald, so I merely did what they had accused me of. Why should I be punished without even committing the crime? Anyway, what I did was far less underhanded and pathetic than what they are attempting to do right now. My cousins and a few other relatives have sent me the email they sent in response to mine, which stated that I have always been jealous and insecure of Gerald, even though my brother threw a last-minute birthday celebration. It was only because I went out of my way to make him feel horrible, and he retaliated. As a result, they made up this incident that never happened, in which apparently a couple of weeks after I had sent out the invitations to the rest of the family, I called Gerald up to mock him about the fact that I was inviting the rest of the family, but not him, because he was simply not good enough to make the cut. Apparently, I had informed Gerald that my in-laws come from a wealthy family, and I didn't want them to know that my brother was a lazy freelancer. Obviously, I had not done anything like that, and anyone who knows me well would not believe it. The rest of the family doesn't believe anything they say about me, so I haven't bothered to clarify anything. I know they are lying and nobody will believe them, but I have to say it's really funny that they had to lie to make me look like the bad guy in order to clean up their own image and reputation. They aren't even helping themselves, instead they are making matters worse. I honestly don't understand why they are so determined to make me the bad person right now, especially because I don't believe I've done anything to harm them aside from one email. It does not make sense to me, however, it is apparent that they are desperate and are currently grabbing at straws for me. This is the end of a chapter, and I'm going to focus on my time as a newlywed because it won't come back. I can handle the drama afterward. I'm very sure this isn't the end of the story, and they'll do their best to drag it out like chewing gum. Update number 2. So, it's been a week since my last post, and Gerald and my parents decided to include me in a conference call yesterday evening. They were both phoning from burner phones, so I don't have their phone numbers preserved, but it's easy to figure out who it was. I was at home with my wife, so I decided to answer the phone and chat with them because I wanted to mess with them, which I did. As soon as I picked up, I pretended not to hear them for around 5 minutes. Even though they had called to yell at me, they had to ensure that they were audible, so before saying anything, they had to coordinate with me, which was extremely amusing anyway. They eventually got down to business and began telling me that the rest of the family was not on good terms with them. Everyone was angry with their actions and believed my parents and Gerald were exceedingly petty, so they expect me to do something about it. I had no idea what they had in mind, so I inquired what they wanted me to do. Even though I had no intention of consenting to it, I chose to play along for fun, but of course they assumed I was honest, so they informed me that a lot of things had been said by all of us, and that at the end of the day, the only thing that was hurting us was our family's reputation as a group. I found it interesting that they were saying so, because in my opinion, the entire incident had done nothing to damage my image or reputation. People still liked me, but I guess they simply wanted me to believe that this was about me or my image, so that I would be more willing to do whatever they asked of me anyway. They told me that they wanted to send out another email stating that we had decided to work things out amongst ourselves and forgive each other. Since after all we are still family, they stated that the only way we would be able to repair our reputation right now was because they did not want to become a laughingstock and subject of gossip for the rest of the family as a result of this incident. But unfortunately, for them, I could see straight through them. I realized they were simply pretending to forgive each other, because they knew no one believed any of the lies they had been spreading about me. If they didn't want to be excluded from the rest of the family, they had to pretend that everything was okay between us again, and that I had forgiven them so that the rest of the family would do the same. But I'd had enough of messing around by then, so I politely declined and stated unequivocally that it was they who wanted to repair their reputation, not me. I had no reason to pretend I had forgiven them. I also had a major issue with how they framed it, replying that we had forgiven each other because I don't believe they are in a position to forgive me. I've done nothing wrong. I may have shouted some things in the heat of the moment, but it was ultimately their decision to miss my wedding and attend the birthday celebration. Whatever happens after that is the result of their actions. Besides, after all the lies they've been spreading about me, I don't want to appear weak and pretend to have forgiven them. So I made it apparent to them that I did not agree with what they had proposed if they wanted to remain angry with me and continue to disseminate lies about me in the hopes that someone would believe them and they would be able to justify everything they were free to do. So my parents, as well as Gerald, were furious. As a result, he told me that it was entirely my fault that if I had just done the decent thing instead of being petty and not asking him to such an important family occasion, none of this would have occurred. It was evident that he felt slighted, and for a second I felt horrible. But then it was my wedding. I'm not obligated to invite everyone, especially when I don't even get along with them and they know it. So I told Gerald that, and we had a disagreement over the phone. He called me selfish, and I told him he was silly to expect me to invite him, especially because we had had little communication aside from family occasions for the preceding few years. If he wanted me to be good to him, perhaps he should have treated me the same way. But as far as I can recall, he has never invited me to any of the celebrations he has given, even though they have never been as important as a wedding or even an engagement. But it is beside the point. The point is, he's never been friend to me. So I don't understand why he expected to be invited to the wedding anyway. After a while, everything were too loud and obnoxious. Gerald was shrieking and my parents were ranting about something else, and I couldn't understand anything, so I just hung up and blocked their burner phone numbers as well. I would not say I completely regret it. I had some fun with them, but I have to say that if they contact me again, I doubt I'll answer. As enjoyable as it was at the beginning, it became quite taxing by the end, and I'm finished update number 3. Hello. Well, it has been a few days since my last update today around 4 a.m. My phone began to buzz when I checked it was an unknown number, so I didn't answer because I was confident it was Gerald, or one of my parents phoning, and again it was 4 a.m., so I had no intention of getting into anything with them at that time, especially since I had to get to work in a few hours. But then, around half an hour after I didn't answer the phone, we started hearing people shouting outside our house and someone ringing the doorbell nonstop while also hammering on the door. Obviously, it was really unsettling, and it took us a few moments to grasp what was happening. But soon enough, my wife and I realized that it was my parents and Gerald outside, and we were hearing their voices. They demanded that we open up and that they needed to speak with us, because what I was doing was wrecking their life. They stated that they had been completely cut off from the rest of the family, and it was all my fault. Now, if it had been any other time of day, I would have been somewhat annoyed, but it was 4 a.m., so I was enraged because aside from that, they simply cannot harass people in this manner. And they were actually quite loud. I was sure the neighbor could hear them as well, but they didn't say anything about it afterward and were kind enough to pretend nothing occurred. I knew they had been startled by the ruckus outside, which made me feel pretty embarrassed anyway. When I heard them outside, I didn't think twice. I simply called the cops on them because I'd had enough. My wife and I sat in bed and let kids scream themselves hoarse while we waited for the cops to arrive. We were both really outraged about whatever was going on, so we didn't get out of bed until the cops arrived. Then we detailed the full issue and got them removed from our land. But by then, we'd lost a lot of sleep and had to miss work today. It's incredibly annoying that we lost an entire day of work due to them and their illogical actions. I can't understand why they were so upset about people not speaking to them at that time. But anyhow, we've had enough. And if anything else happens, I believe we'll need to file for a restraining order. Moving or replacing numbers is a major undertaking that may be costly or time-consuming. Hence, this is not currently possible, but that's the least we can do, even though they haven't explicitly threatened us, so I'm not sure if we have grounds for it or not. We'll talk to a lawyer, so let's see how things proceed. Update number 4. Hello. So, it has been a few days since the incident in the morning. Following that, we spoke with a lawyer the same evening. My parents and Gerald were just trespassing and raising a commotion. They hadn't actually hurt anyone or anything. So they were let off with a warning for disorderly behavior and no charges were filed. But fortunately for us, we still have grounds for a restraining order based on their behavior, so we chose to pursue it today. They'd the notice in a few days. We'd go to court and put an end to this, which will be a big relief. I've already spoken to several members of my family about this. I don't see the sense in disguising their behavior any longer, and it's genuinely startling that they're acting this way, especially given that they never cared much for the rest of the family previously. True, my parents were never particularly close to the rest of the family, and Gerald rarely speaks to anyone in the family, so having people cut them off shouldn't have had such a negative impact on them. I am guessing this isn't about the family cutting them off at all. This is simply about them trying to cause trouble for me. Well, I hope they're happy now, because they've only screwed things up for themselves. Now they must face the repercussions of their deeds. It's incredibly terrible that so much turmoil could have been avoided if my parents and brother had simply behaved normally, but they had to go out of their way to embarrass themselves, and hence me. It's not like I like the procedure. It's actually quite unfortunate that I'll have to obtain a restraining order against my own family, but the circumstances demand for it, and I don't have any other option. This is honestly quite pathetic. Update number 5. Hey. It's been 4 weeks since my previous update. My family's 2-year restraining order was recently obtained, which is excellent. The rest of the family is in solidarity with us, as they have been since the beginning. But as of now, they have not only blocked them out of their life and stopped inviting them to events, but they have also begun to communicate with me more frequently. ensuring that I am doing well, and checking in on me. Even though I feel absolutely good most of the time, there are times when I feel really sad about what has happened to my family. I appreciate that the rest of the family is making up for it. I wouldn't trade having this kind of support system for anything in the world. I feel very connected to everyone, especially my cousins, because they have been at the forefront of everything, assisting me emotionally and practically, such as putting me into touch with an excellent lawyer, so I'm extremely appreciative for everything everyone has done for me, and I believe it's time for me to start a new chapter. My wife and I are departing for our honeymoon in a few days, and I'm hoping that when we return, things will have changed. I know a change of environment is precisely what we need. Therefore, I am looking forward to the next week and a half. I'm going to ignore everything to do with my parents and Gerald. I am determined not to let them ruin this for me in the same way that they tried to wreck my wedding anyway. Thank you to everyone, one who stayed up to date on what was going on with me, and for all of the support in the comments. See you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.